Because I'm on their making and call him in their Trinidad they call him Sweater. In my town they call him Hollow. So the same man have 10 different names.
Yes.
But one fingerprint.
Yes.
One fingerprint.
Country. Jamaicans will have to live under the new constitution for generations to come. We have a solemn duty to ensure that the new constitution is appropriately balanced and will protect the rights of our people and the democracy that guarantees our freedoms. Therefore, due care and attention must be given to the proposed changes that will be put into any new constitution. And as the opposition, we have a particular responsibility to be vigilant in this regard. The process of reform must be fully open and transparent. The Constitutional Reform Committee, or CRC, has issued a report, and it must be immediately shared with the public. It cannot be hidden away and only known by its members and by the inner reaches of government. Indeed, the public should have been empowered to review and comment on the reform proposals as detailed in that report, so that the public's views on the specific proposals could be considered by the committee before the report was sent to Cabinet. In my view, the entire reform process has been flawed. It should have been preceded by intense public education on the existing constitution so that the people of Jamaica would have been informed as to what now exists and where the changes ought to come. The reform process should have been genuinely open to a fresh look at the kind of constitution that Jamaicans want to have in the 21st century, rather than limiting ourselves to positions that were agreed some 30 years ago in the 1990s. The terms of reference of the reform should themselves have been open to consultation and consensus, rather than being narrowly dictated by the government. As a result of how it's happened, the decision made by the government to implement positions agreed by the two political parties some 30 years ago, when Jamaicans who are now up to 50 years old had no role in or awareness of those discussions, is an untenable process for seeking engagement and participation in the new constitution by our people. As a result, the reality is that the public consultations which have occurred have really had little significant impact on the contents of the proposals in the CRC report, which has gone to Cabinet yesterday for approval. The wide-ranging desires and concerns of the public for Jamaica's constitution have not found their way into any significant reform proposals in that document. From the outset, back in June or July of 2022, before any Constitutional Reform Committee was appointed, I wrote to the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs to make it clear to the government that for us in the People's National Party, final and full decolonization is a fundamental issue of access to justice for the Jamaican people and of national sovereignty. I have been open and consistent on this position throughout the process since then. Indeed, it is not a Mark Golding position. It is a position of the People's National Party. And we have been consistently trying to move Jamaica in this direction for decades, as you know. Our position is that time come to leave the British monarchy in full, once and for all. When Jamaica is moving out of the King's Yard, we cannot have 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the yard. That would leave us neither fish nor fowl in another man's yard. That can't work. We will not support a phased approach to dealing with the matter of full decolonization, because the phased approach does not guarantee its attainment. It may never happen if we do it that way. The arrangements for access to our people's final court need to get away from visa requirements. We need to get away from rules of court that are in conflict with and whittle down our constitutional rights of appeal. We need to get away from the exorbitant costs of appealing to a final court in London. Ladies and gentlemen, an appeal to the final court can cost taxpayers of Jamaica, in a case involving the government, of over $130 million for one appeal. That is unsustainable and a waste of taxpayers' resources, given where we are in terms of our institutional arrangements regionally. We must move away from having our Constitution interpreted by a colonial-era court comprised of judges in the UK who have no first-hand knowledge of Jamaican culture and conditions. We must move with full confidence in the Caribbean Court of Justice. It is an institution of excellence that has been designed to be both independent of political influence and accessible to our people at an affordable cost. It is a regional institution that Jamaica helped to design and establish. It is fully funded by a trust fund to ensure its protection from external influences. And our people, the Jamaican people, helped to pay for that trust fund. Jamaica is still awaiting Prime Minister Andrew Holness's clear position on the issue of moving away from the Privy Council to the Caribbean Court of Justice as our final court of appeal. From last October, the minister promised that Mr. Holness would soon be making a statement clarifying his position and the government's position on this. 3 weeks ago, I discussed the matter with Mr. Holness behind the Speaker's chair in Parliament, and he said he would be considering the matter, which he understood to be of great importance to us, and that he would let us know where he stands. I didn't hear from him, and I wrote to him a week ago, once again requesting him to make his position known. Jamaica still has not heard from its Prime Minister on this fundamental issue. Ladies and gentlemen, the People's National Party cannot sign off on a report that does not facilitate us moving forward with a bipartisan approach based on consensus around the new Constitution. We as opposition are also concerned about several of the reform proposals that are in the CRC report that has been taken to Cabinet, which we regard as problematic in several respects. And I will mention some of those now. As it stands, the report would enable the government of the day, and this is not about the current government or a future government. This is any government going forward once we have a new constitution. The report would enable the government of the day to use its majority in Parliament to install a president, head of state of the government's choosing, in circumstances where there is no consensus with the opposition as to the appointment of that individual as president. This is unacceptable. The president has important powers, making appointments to sensitive positions within the government and the state, and also ceremonial duties as a figure of national unity. It is vital that the president must be someone who enjoys the trust and confidence of both political parties and the wider public. The report would allow the government of the day to use its majority to extend the life of Parliament beyond 5 years. Again, we do not think any government should have that power on its own. The report does nothing to strengthen accountability within Parliament. It expressly rejects the introduction of an impeachment procedure for parliamentarians whose misconduct brings that office into disrepute. Despite an impeachment bill having been developed and tabled in Parliament by the Bruce Golding government, although they never passed it at the time, despite the passage of an impeachment bill being an unfulfilled JLP manifesto commitment from 2016, and despite an updated impeachment bill having been tabled by me as leader of the opposition in Parliament in 2021. Despite these things, the report is saying there should be no impeachment procedure in the new Constitution. The report also does nothing to end majority party control of important parliamentary committees, which should be for providing checks and balances to hold the government to account for its conduct of the nation's business, but as it stands today, are dominated by the government side. As it stands today, most of these committees are controlled and managed by government MPs, with the opposition only having a very small presence and not appointing the chairman. This report does nothing about that. The report also does not deal with long-standing issues of concern to important stakeholders. The desire for engagement and participation by Jamaicans in the diaspora who support our country's national development in critical ways, financially and otherwise. It does nothing to recognize the rights of indigenous groups such as the Maroons and the Rastafari community. These things have not been addressed in the report, despite being matters of real concern to many Jamaicans. Ladies and gentlemen, the rush to take this report to Cabinet without allowing the committee to deliberate on these important issues raised by the opposition in my comments sent last week Friday via Minister Hilton to the minister who co-chairs that committee shows that the government has no genuine desire to achieve consensus on the contents of the new Constitution. As can be expected, the government is now seeking to shift blame to us as the opposition for the government's failure to engage authentically with the opposition to identify a common pathway forward. The public should not be hoodwinked by what is being said in the media today. We have been responsible. We have sought to participate genuinely in the process. We have very real concerns about some of the contents of the report, and we have a fundamental issue which is at the core of our party's philosophy, which needs to be addressed, and we need to hear from the Prime Minister if we're to move forward together. As I have said, this matter will govern generations to come, and we must allow and follow our conscience and do what we believe to be right by the Jamaican people. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, have you ever wondered why a government may want to change the constitution through the parliament? Now, we all know that all these governments that are controlling or that are governing our countries, majority of them have the majority numbers in the parliament, and for that reason they have the advantage to changing some acts of the parliament whether you like it or not. Now, there is this one process that should be respected. Now, the people's permission to change any act of the parliament or any act of the constitution is very, very important. Now, in this crucial video, you are going to learn that the Jamaicans, some Jamaicans are not even aware that the government through the parliament is changing some parts of the constitution. Now, these parts of the constitution are very crucial, and maybe some Jamaicans or some people may have not agreed if given the chance to vote on a referendum. Now, it's very, very insightful to say that the government is correct on changing the constitution. Now, if at all any government wants to change how it is running the country, or some acts of the parliament, or some acts of the constitution, now it is their duty to go back to the people and ask them if they are so much okay with that. Now, we all believe that democracy exists, right? Now, if at all democracy exists in our countries, now democracy is the rule of the people, by the people, and for the people. And for this case, if you are ruling the people or you are leading the people, in democracy we believe you do not rule, you lead. In dictatorship, you rule and give orders whenever you want, change the laws whenever you want, because you actually have ignored the democracy part of that leadership. Now, Jamaica is believed to be a democratic country, right? And where people's expressions are given in a direct manner through their members of parliament, or through maybe public speaking, or all that. We all know that. But how comes the government is moving so fast to change some parts, or to amend some parts of the constitution? Some Jamaicans are not even aware. Some will learn from this video and will check later. Now, there have been these parliament sessions about changing the constitution. Now, the Finance Act has been changed already. If you did not know, please know. There are some taxes that have been proposed. Now, the people's engagement, the people's involvement in all of this process is very important. You are going to believe, and you are going to agree with me at the end of this video, that whenever a government changes a part of the constitution, it's because they feel like they are being pressed by some of that part of the constitution. It's not because the peoples are being pressed. Now, the only thing that presses the people is when democracy does not prevail. It's when they are eager to, when they are not represented in an equal manner as how they would have wanted. It's when some leaders take themselves as the lords of this country, as the lords of this world after being elected. Now, the people will actually get intrigued by any democratic movement when only not respected. Now, if at all Jamaican parliament will come out clearly and tell the people, we want to do this because of this, give us your own ideas and opinions. Now, I'm sure the people of Jamaica will turn out in their large numbers to vote for a referendum, to either say no to these changes or to say yes to these changes. Now, it is good when a government seeks mandate from its people. Now, it's the people that mandated the government to do the roles that they are doing through the constitution. Now, the constitution speaks about how it can be changed itself. Now, the PNP leader has realized that this, however, has not been followed, because the parliament, believing to have the majority of the numbers in parliament, they can go ahead and change the constitution and change some acts of the constitution. Now, note this, it's very important in a democratic state that the people are involved. Everyone must feel either left out or included. Now, in being left out, it means you went to a referendum and said no, but the yes people had it. Or you went to a referendum and said yes, but the no people had it. That's when you feel excluded. But that is still democracy. But democracy comes with so much expense. It comes with a price. Now, this is the price you have to pay. Now, if you have to change the constitution, you have to go to the people. Then you have to do a budget for that. Now, the referendum must be done in a process, and that process needs finance. That process must be financed, and that means that some part of that revenue must be scrapped off, or a new tax will be introduced to the people so that this referendum can be done, so that the funds to do the referendum can be raised. So it's very hard for a referendum to be done without the knowledge of the people. It is so good to include the people. The rule of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's whatever prevails. Now, it's very important when Jamaicans have to know about this. The amendments of the constitution. Please grab a newspaper, or please go listen to your parliament sessions, and you'll go and realize that there are some parts that are being changed. I guess some of you didn't know about this, but it's high time you now know. Some parts of the constitution are being changed, and the government is on the forefront of doing this. Now, the dual citizenship topic is being addressed, and the Prime Minister is suggesting that if you are a dual citizen in Jamaica, you can't vie for any position because of the loyalty thing. Now, please watch the video again and again. Go do your research, then you will be informed. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really thank you for keeping intact and keeping the channel going. Thank you so much. One love.